everyone. Can you hear me? Yes, you're being quieter. So, I am echoing from a long way away. I'm kind of liking this. This must be how the Rolling Stones feel when they play Wembley. Right, nice to see you. My name is Grant Gibson. I am the co-founder of a podcast and a very large event called Material Matters. Just very quickly, a bit of background. In the podcast, I talk to a designer, maker, artist or architect about a material or technique with which they're intrinsically linked and discover how it changed their lives and careers. It's a little bit like Desert Island Discs, but using materials rather than songs. I'm delighted that the organisers of these awards asked me to chair this, and they've assembled what can only be described as a crack panel. To my left, I have Jo Knight, not Joanna, Jo Knight, who, we've known each other a while.
Let's not go there, Grant.
Let's not go there.
Yeah.
Just to let you know, I'm going to give them a very brief hello, and then I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves, because I think they'll do that a lot better than I do. But Jo and I have known each other a long time. Jo, you really come from the world of workplace, really.
Yeah.
Just one further on, I have Edwin Ryder, who's an expert in wood. And then to my far left is ANA DEL RIO, who makes incredible things out of leather. So just in the first instance, crack panel, maybe can I get you to introduce yourselves? Jo, tell us a little about yourself.
Hi, I have worked in the furniture industry for far too long, probably approaching 40 years, predominantly in office and contract furniture. And back in the early 2000s, I was a founder director of a company that was very focused. Yes, we sold a lot of new products, but we also had our own in-house on-site repairs teams. We had our own renovation facilities and our own recycling centres, which at that time was really quite groundbreaking. I now work as an independent sustainability consultant, journalist. I work with Grant and his colleagues, writing articles. I'm also here with my capacity as the chair of the Climate Change Committee at the Furniture Makers Company, which is the charity for the industry. I could go on. I have other hats as well, but that'll do.
Well, as chair, I reserve the right to interject from time to time, just so we're clear. Was there a moment then when you were selling furniture and then your interest changed into sustainability? When did that happen and why?
I guess it was early 2000s when I realised how wasteful the industry is. I always make the joke that, shall I just say I'm sort of latter end of my career, and but I perhaps don't look it, and one of the reasons is because there used to be so much formaldehyde in the MFC board used to make furniture that I've actually been pickled.
So you could be a Damien Hirst art object, is that what you're saying?
Correct, that's what I'm saying. But I think it's also, if you look, it's actually got worse over the last 20 years. You look at the workplace environment, particularly in London, leases are now down at typically 5 years.
Okay.
And every 5 years, people change offices and they think, right, let's just chuck the old stuff away. So okay. We can talk about durability, but not if people don't want to. We will talk about durability, I'm certain, during the next 45 minutes. By the way, we're going to talk for 45 minutes. I'm rather keen, because I've had a long week, truth be told, and I'm rather keen to involve you. So there will be a space for questions if you want to. I know you're a long way away and it might be difficult to get involved, but we will have a roving mic. So if you've got questions, bear them in mind, keep them up your sleeve. Edwin, tell us a bit about yourself.
So yeah, I've just been running a company that has recently launched an interior design studio. Started as a joinery company with a workshop. More recently, been won 2 awards for sustainability for Monk Eyewear and Chiltern High Street. And we've been pushing on sustainability since the very start. It was one of the main things about our brand when it launched. And we've been in and out of it ever since, struggling between sustainability and brand building, realizing that you can't just be good at sustainability, you have to be good at a whole raft of other things too, and then have that as a kind of a side focus and hopefully one day make it a full focus. Now that we're taking on the interior design for all the interior fit outs for restaurants, offices, shops and homes, we're really hoping to be able to make more of a difference because we're more in control of like the full range of decisions that need to be made. And yeah, I think that's...
Yeah, I'm intrigued. Sustainability and brand building, are they mutually exclusive?
Sustainability helps brand building. Brand building allows you the control and the kind of the clout to be able to be more sustainable. Essentially, at the same time, building a bigger brand, doing more work, essentially makes you less sustainable. But gives you more control on sustainability, on the decisions, and allows you to attract the right sort of projects. But it's all problematic in my view. We are not a sustainable company. Hopefully we are more sustainable than most, and hopefully our outlook and our approach is going to make some change, but we are not sustainable.
Interesting. We'll maybe pick up on that later. Anna, let's talk all things leather.
Sure. So hi, I'm Anna. I'm a fashion designer specialising in leathercraft. My passion is making leather garments which have innovation in the surface techniques. I love to kind of explore and push the boundaries of what this natural material can do. I sort of found leather not that long ago in my final year at university, but it's sort of been a bit of a crazy journey since. My intention is to promote it as a natural and sustainable option within design, and to bring back those values and the tradition that lies behind leather to consumers nowadays, and to promote sort of exciting new ideas within design, and especially in garments where sort of a lot of the surface techniques get applied many times to accessories, and I sort of want to give that new vision in garments. I've just recently moved to London and set up my studio at Cockpit Arts through the Leather Sellers Award, so I'm really excited to be here and to be able to properly set up and launch my brand, where I make made-to-order and bespoke pieces.
Are you in the new Cockpit studios, or you're in...
The Deptford ones,
Deptford.
Yeah. So they've got the Leather Hub there, which is an amazing resource, also funded by the Leather Sellers, so loads of machinery and a great leather community.
Interesting. I mean, can we talk about leather? Because do you think leather has an image problem? It's quite a divisive material for some.
Yes, for sure. I feel like it's very extreme. You either love it or you hate it. I believe there's a lot of misinformation, and one end tries to sort of hate on the other, so it becomes quite a bit of an issue throughout media. And also I believe there's a lack of education through younger generations, especially creatives who are choosing their materials, on the correct way of sourcing and understanding not just the material itself but how it's been processed. So I believe there is a huge issue through education and misinformation, but hopefully slowly we can tackle that and make it a loved material again.
I mean, how do we change its image other than doing panels like this?
Yeah, I believe going sort of to the source of the issue and sort of investigating and making sure there's certification in place. I think that's really key. And again, educating on that certification so that young designers or even consumers understand what they're buying into and using. I even recently seen shops starting to tag products with symbols from the Leather Working Group. But of course, it's no use if the consumer doesn't know what the Leather Working Group is. So it's about connecting all that. But yeah, it is quite a large challenge at hand.
Interesting. So, now people, we know who everybody on the stage is. Edwin, I'm going to turn to you first, if I may. I mean, what do you see as the benefits of natural materials in sectors from fashion to construction? Which is a really large question to answer, but we have time.
I'll make it as brief as possible. So I think first of all, we love the way they look, we love the way they feel, the experience and the story behind all of it is like almost everybody would much rather buy sustainable natural materials than others. And I think the benefits are not always so clear. So you think of a natural material as being something that's just come straight from the ground or straight from a tree, but quite often it's had a lot of processing, and that's something that I think is really important to keep in mind when we look at the benefits. I think the benefits are, the energy consumption as they're being made, the entire life cycle of the material, and also the way the waste of that material is managed, or that product. I think design is an absolutely crucial part to play. First of all, we look at products and also in fit-outs in construction. The designer has a key role, and I think quite often that's made difficult because of the cost of these more sustainable products. But I think that starting with the designer, convincing the client to then also put pressure on the contractor to kind of make sure these products are more sustainable as a whole is crucial. But I think this needs to be taken holistically. We need to look at everything involved and look at the life cycle analysis. And I think at the end of the day, whatever the product is made of, it needs to last as long as possible. But in saying that, you also have the issue that if it lasts a huge amount of time, well, how long is it going to be loved for? So we have to design and make things which last a long time, that people will love for a long period of time. And I think trends make that particularly tricky. We've got such a quick turnover of fashion, of fit-outs, of all of these different things. And that creates a lot of challenges. And I think that with so something we've tried to do is, in my company, is to design stuff really, really carefully, think through all the potential issues, makes each element durable to make sure that we can kind of benefit from, first of all, it staying there as long as possible. When they've finished with it, for example, with the kitchen, when they've finished with it, can it be removed and repurposed or reused, upcycled? And that's before we think about anything to do with recycling or waste. So yeah, it's taking a holistic view. And I think some benefits are that they make us feel good, they can create kind of positive action. But then at the same time, so you buy one sustainable thing, it encourages you to buy another. Sustainable kind of furniture in your house. You might think, okay, if I'm doing that, then I can make other positive changes. But at the same time, it also convinces us that we're doing something good, whereas actually we may not be.
Very good. Edwin, you used the word trends, and you're sat next to a fashion designer. How do you avoid, in your line of work, how do you avoid, do you avoid trends?
Yeah, personally, I really do try and shy away from them. I believe in a form of design which is sort of seasonless and removing those trends, because again, if you're wanting to pass those products down through generations in the future, you've got to be able to adapt to different likes from different generations. So it's a tricky one, but I believe that there are certain aesthetics that you can follow and certain ways of using the materials that you're designing with, in order to not link them to current trends that are going to, after a year or pretty much less, never be wanted again. Again, I think the material itself can do a lot of that talking for the product. And I believe there is a huge association with some of the natural materials, such as leather, with that idea of longevity. So by using those products, you can also kind of engrave in people's mind that idea of buying a quality product that you want to keep and that you cherish, and having a connection with the product. And if people can create a connection with the product, it sort of lasts for longer, and it's not about a trend, it's about the product and the connection you've got to it.
Yeah, because I think there's a terrifying statistic that I use from time to time, that the average t-shirt is worn 6 times before it's thrown away, which is extraordinary. Trends in the workplace. Don't often think of the workplace as being a kind of trend-filled area, Joanna, but is it?
Hugely trendy. You should know that.
Well, I did sort of, but it's my job to ask questions.
Okay, fair enough. I think part of the problem, the pandemic has been interesting because it's led to this focus that at the moment the chatter is very much about hybrid working. Should we have hybrid working? Shouldn't we have hybrid working? How many desks do you need in the office? Should we have collaboration hubs? Should we have that hub? But I think the ultimate issue, you were mentioning about longevity and durability, and I couldn't agree with you more, but there has to be a will to want to continue using things. And I think that's part of the problem, in that for some reason in a corporate world you would think we'd be more responsible because we have a duty of care in terms of our ESG commitments, but I don't believe we do. I just feel that that just gets thrown out of the window because we're going to start with new. There's a new way of doing things. We can make people more happy by having a more mindful workplace because we've got this wonderful collaboration area or whatever it might be. And it's the waste element, and the longevity is sort of pretty much forgotten.
The story of the workplace fundamentally since the Design of Action office has been a kind of trends-filled, going from cellular to open plan, it being too noisy, going to another place. So it is a world full of fashion.
Well, to be fair, that's not necessarily entirely driven by a trend. It's been driven very much by technology.
Yeah.
Because originally we had to be attached to a desk because we needed a wire. And then gradually that's changed. But yeah, it's still very much based on trends and colour schemes and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, what are the challenges that natural world faces in delivering from scaling of resources to skills, in your view?
The biggest challenge is, I think, that we as a society look for simple answers. We want a binary decision. Is that good or is that bad? And when it comes to sustainability, we've talked a lot between us now already about, is this product sustainable? Well, it probably is and it probably isn't. And so it's about being mindful. I think ultimately it's also about understanding the decisions you're making, and that's where the resources issues comes into being, or lack of knowledge very often. I think people make decisions based on something they've seen on social media or what they've read in, dare I say it, as a journalist in a magazine.
Nobody reads magazines, Joanna, it's fine.
Okay. Oh, looks like we're redundant.
Look, yes.
So I think it's ultimately about having the time and expertise to actually do the research to understand the decisions you're making. And how are you going to? It's about planning for the future. So if you are kitting out a new office, for example, what's going to happen to those items when you don't need them anymore? You have a responsibility to plan for that.
Why is it wood for you, Edwin? How did you decide that wood was your material of choice?
I didn't want to correct you, but we work with tons and tons of different materials.
Okay.
Everything from recycled plastics, glass, metals, pretty much anything goes, as if it fits the design and can be kind of, not bonded in a way that makes it unsustainable.
Okay, so the bonding thing is interesting.
Really interesting.
Let's talk a bit about that.
Yeah.
The importance of monomaterials in your thinking.
Yeah. So I can tell you a really bad example of some work we've done.
Okay.
Working with...
So you pick out your own work which is bad?
Absolutely, because it's something I regret, absolutely. So, yeah, we got recommended by a recycled plastics company to build about 10 desks. We accepted, we quoted, we won the job, and the plastic is all 100% recycled and 100% recyclable. There are some pros and cons of using plastics. At some point it's going to go into landfill. But later on we were unable to, we was either kind of let the job go or accept certain conditions. And one of the conditions was they wanted a semi-transparent plastic, which meant we had to glue all of the plastic to MDF. These tables are hugely heavy. They're not likely to be moved to another place. I don't think they'll go into another building. And also they were shipped to Israel. So you've got a sustainable material gone to a sustainable company, and they end up essentially bonding it permanently to another material and then being shipped across the world. So it's just a really good example of how to do it really badly. But no doubt, I won't name the company that has the office, a big website provider for small businesses.
Okay.
And no doubt, they are claiming that their office is more sustainable as a result. And it's made no difference.
Yeah. I mean, in your view, from a business perspective, which is just what we kind of got into, what is our best strategy to claim market share? I mean, should we be talking about fear of impacts to the natural world or selling the benefits of natural-based solutions?
I don't know if fear works.
Yeah.
It works in certain environments, but I don't think something's going to scare you into buying something in the way we buy things these days. You want to buy something because it's going to make you feel good at the time, and the thing is so disconnected that the purchase of that thing, doing anything positive, is far too disconnected. It's too vast. So I think that, but then the positive side of it is constantly played by greenwashing. So many people saying, "Oh, this is good because of this reason, or this is because of that reason," and there doesn't seem to be any sort of score associated with it to say, this is more or less sustainable than this other product. So how do we win market share? I think it's this thing of like positive action. Just because, like for example, with my company, that it's not a sustainable company, but we're taking positive action. People come to us expecting a certain thing. We're more likely to then deliver something sustainable. And I think that we can also then encourage, with the conversations already started, and we can encourage people to be more sustainable and buy certain other products too. I think with you, the positive action is it's a natural material. It's not something that's kind of made from petrochemicals. We're stimulating something. But I just think that it has to come along with, it's not great for benefiting the market and creating market share, but it has to come along with some sort of balanced description, if you like, of this product in terms of sustainability.
I mean, we had a talk at our event last week, and there was a piece about it in DZine a little while ago, a new term called green hushing. Is this a phrase you've come up, Joanna, you're nodding, where brands are terrified to talk about their sustainable credentials in case somebody leaps on them and points out the bits of their business that aren't sustainable. Is that something we should be concerned about?
I don't think we should, but I think we should be open and honest. The trouble is the whole economic structure of our society doesn't allow for us being open and honest in reality. I mean, I suppose it's also like in the field in which I work, particularly within workplace, there is a complete obsession on carbon counting, certainly in the London market. And that, you know, it makes, again, this sort of very binary choice between, oh, look, that's 10 kilos less carbon than that product. Well, so, and ultimately, if you don't look at the longevity and the circularity of the product, then it's completely irrelevant. And I give the example of wool being a good one.
Let's talk about wool. Go on.
Yeah. If you look at wool, it has and I'm talking about these carbon counters that we refer to, it has a higher carbon footprint than polyester. Polyester's made from oil. Wool comes from sheep when I last checked. And yet, the reason being is the whole process and the way in which we're evaluating the life cycle analyses. So the parameters that have been put in place, or the boundaries, mean that we consider the methane that the sheep produce, and I think we can work out how they produce that methane. And but we don't take into account the grass that they are grazing on, or greenery they're grazing on. And so the end result is that you have wool, which is biodegradable, by the way, and that aspect isn't taken into account, and yet polyester releases microplastics once it goes into landfill. So it's, you know, there is no simple answer. Again, it's about, but the hushing piece actually is driving these decisions, because people say, look, I've got a piece of paper with an LCA, so it must be green.
We had a shepherd on our talks program last week, and there was quite a long discussion as to whether you could put your jumper in the compost heap, which nobody ever talks about, which I thought was quite intriguing. Anyway.
Well, you probably can't.
Well, it depends how it's been processed.
Yeah.
At the end of it. Anna, do you think that society, bear in mind some of the things that have been said, needs a fundamental reset in its approach to our material selection and use if we're going to survive?
Yeah, we can't carry on like this. We definitely need a reset. And I think it's because we've forgotten to ask a lot of the questions that I believe other generations did when it comes to consuming products. Sort of thinking, what do I need? Why do I need it? Where can I get it from? And then when you're at that situation, let's say you're looking for garments, are you looking at the care label? I feel like no one ever talks about checking a care label and seeing what it's made of, where it's coming from, maybe if it has certifications that now some brands include. I think all those questions, and I think it is from a lack of education, and also because the shift of society's ideas have gone from more is better instead of quality. It's also about, again, price points, as it's been mentioned before, when actually in the long run it would be cheaper to have less, better quality, and creating that sort of capsule wardrobe for yourself that you love and cherish, and actually will probably make you happier in the long run. But unfortunately, yes, we have these kind of mixed ideas and very divided groups, and people really do get into it and they're trying and learning, and of course there are those polarized ideas which people do feel quite attacked by, but I think people are trying to learn. But there's a huge group of people who sort of do evaluate and prefer certain things to do with price points, and they don't really care about what it's made of.
I mean, this notion of fewer better things, does that fit with capitalism?
No, sure answer.
Who wants to take that? Joanna?
This is part of the problem. The whole point of sustainability is it's about the 3 Ps, isn't it? People, planet, profit. Because all of those threes need to be in balance in order for us to, as a society, to survive. The problem is that it's getting that balance right.
Yeah.
And I think most of us I mean, dare I say it, I come from a generation where stuff was expensive and hard to come by. And so in those days, and it wasn't that long ago, by the way, we did used to keep things and mend them and cherish them because we knew it would be really expensive to buy a new one. And so, but ultimately our society has evolved, hasn't it? And that it's very often cheaper to buy new.
Importance of repair, Edwin. Do you repair things? Do people come to you when you've done a fit out and say...
Constantly, yeah. So even years down the line, we have a care manual for every project we do, so that later down the line, we know exactly which product was used to finish those items, and if they're scratched, damaged, or need to be replaced, it can easily be done. But I think, what was you said about repair? And I think, yeah, it's about, not just about providing repair, it's, are you building something that can be repaired? Because there's certain things like HPL laminates, for example, for standard Formica laminate, if it's scratched, there's no way of repairing that. Whereas something like a product like Phoenix, for example, which does a different HPL laminate, scratches can be rubbed out, can be repaired. Wood is probably the easiest thing to repair because it's solid core. You know, if it gets scratched or damaged, just like an oak floor, you can sand it and lacquer it. But so many other products, once they're damaged, they're either irreparable or really, really hard to repair. So I think that's also part of the approach.
I mean, repair is a bit of a theme in the office world at the moment, isn't it? All these products that are being designed now have components that can be easily detached and repaired.
Absolutely, designed for disassembly so that you can get spare parts, and increasingly, I mean, the talk is in the UK we're about to introduce, we already have right to repair for electrical goods, that is going to become legislation. A project that I'm involved in, little plug for the project I'm involved in, but I absolutely believe in it passionately, is the development of digital product passports. So that you can then know who made that, where did it come from, what's it made of, how do you get hold of spare parts? Because part of the problem in the office world is you turn a product upside down, chances are it hasn't got a label on it. You've no idea who made it, when it was made, whether it was in warranty, how do I get spare parts? So the idea that you have a passport for every single individual product, and you can scan that passport and can instantly tell that, I think it's a huge development, and certainly EU legislation is coming in that means that it will be law.
But we're going to create an extraordinarily large amount of data if we do that. Is this where AI becomes... I had to ask about AI. You can't do a panel discussion without mentioning AI. I'm contractually obliged. Is this where AI becomes a useful tool?
I think it does. I do accept that. I mean, it's like I often say to people, just simply because if I'm having a bad day and I want to turn my camera off, I say I'm saving the planet. But the reality is that most of us think that because we're sat at home on Teams calls that we're saving the planet. It's not true, is it? There is a big carbon footprint from our digital life.
So what are you saying? That AI shouldn't be... I mean, if we're going to create... It seems like there's a dichotomy here where we are tracking every component of everything that we make, but by the same token, we won't be able to unless we have massive data.
Well, then not if you have the original digital product passport, because it means that that's already embedded in blockchain, and so therefore you're not creating additional data. Okay,
fair enough. I'm kind of intrigued because we have obviously some students in the audience, Anna, and you're, let's face it, the young person on the panel. I mean, so, I don't know, when I started writing about design 25, 30 years ago, there was a kind of a standard path. People would go through Royal College of Art, they'd probably make a roto-moulded piece of furniture, they'd get picked up by a large Italian firm, and then their career was kind of launched. Your generation, what are your ambitions now, coming out into a world that I'm guessing is quite confusing?
Yeah. Gosh, ambition is such a huge word, but I feel like there's a lot to be done, and when you're mentioning about youth, I believe youth is the future, and if you can't engage those people, then you're not going to be able to create any of this change. So for me, as a designer, it's not only promoting the materials and the designs that I'm trying to do, but it is also engage and inspire the younger generations who also take that place further down the line. So when you were mentioning about technology, it's quite an interesting conversation. Some people love it, some people hate it. I personally don't use AI, but I do try and innovate through the use of technology, combining tradition with technology to create better outcomes, because when you talk about durability and making a product that's going to last, actually some of the traditional methods are great and they've lasted through these generations, but also with that addition of certain technology, you can improve that product and then in the future repair it better and just have a sort of perfect quality that will engage the consumer better and hopefully attract them to the product as well more. So yeah, ambition is, gosh, there's so many things to do, and I feel like I've got all my life to hopefully achieve them, but really it's implementing all these little bits along the way to hopefully create a bigger picture in the future.
We have some time left. Does anybody have any questions? I think there's probably, oh, there is, I see a mic being handed over. There is a roving mic. Does anybody want to ask, even if you're right at the back? Hey, we've got the first question is always the hardest. I'm loving you. Gentleman over here. If you could let us know who you are, what you do, that would be great.
Thank you. So my name is Sohag. I'm head of product for a software company. And it's quite interesting listening to all of you, talking about technology, blockchain, AI, design, producers, materials, all of that kind of stuff. But it's not necessarily a question, but it's kind of a statement I wanted to make. If you're doing the right thing when it comes to producing your products, using the right materials, doing things right when it comes to design, but you're not making the information available for your consumers, of course it's not going to get to the results that you want to get to, right? So I think we need to find a really good partnership with techs, with producers in terms of materials and your end products, designers, as well as regulators, right? So that everyone's going to work together and kind of change and shift the kind of trend you talked about, right? Because you see, if you are producing, you're bringing, so let's talk about Apple, right? If they are bringing in a new model every single year, people are going to be feeling the pressure to buy a new phone every single year, right? So how do we change this? Where do we get the regulators to come in and then, kind of change that message around to say, actually, less is better. You don't necessarily have to get a new model every year. And a pressure to the producers as well that they don't come up with new models every single year, right? So I think there needs to be some sort of partnership between all these different parties and making this information available to the end users so that they can make those informed decisions.
Really interesting point. I'm possibly touching on something I was keen to ask a little bit about. The mobile phone comment. I did a podcast with Bas van Abel, the founder of Fairphone, earlier this year. And they're investigating a rental model. Where do you stand on, I'm looking at you, Joanna, where do you stand on rental?
We in this country in particular are not very good at renting things. We like to own things. Many years ago, when we had the London Olympic Games, they made a statement that they wanted zero landfill. And my company supplied all of the furniture for the offices, but we didn't sell it to them. We rented it to them. And we also didn't guarantee it would be new. And so that way they could guarantee zero landfill. But the irony of it is, in the commercial world, people don't, for example, rent furniture. And the reason they don't rent furniture is pure accounting purposes. Because if you rent furniture, it sits on your profit and loss. If you buy it, it sits on the balance sheet. So that's the reason? I don't think so, but unfortunately that's real life. But I think we should be looking, I mean, again, going back to, dare I say it, my youth, TVs were really expensive.
Well, our first video was rented, right?
Yeah, because TVs were just too expensive. You had to rent them. And you had radio rentals, before that was the radio and washing machine. Because it makes sort of sense, because isn't it about risk management? Who's best able to manage that risk? And it's probably the manufacturer.
We've had the tricky first question. By contrast, the second question is a cakewalk. Has anybody got anything they'd like to ask? Oh, in the front. There we go. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Zachary Berry. I did the shoe over there.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I was just wondering, so I did a furniture project recently, and a big problem was the fire-resistant coating on like sofas, etc. And I was just wondering, especially in the workplace, how, because I'm aware that, well, with fire-resistant coating, it kind of affects the end of life of the product and the recyclability after use.
Hugely.
Yeah.
Because ultimately it means that it all has to be incinerated, which is quite ironic given it's the fire-resistant coating. But you're probably aware, therefore, that in the domestic standards, so for your sofa in your house, actually has higher regulations, so even more chemicals applied to it than they do in the workplace. There is a big consultation going on at the moment to review that, but it got stalled because of the general election. And I think from everything I'm hearing is it's not going to rear its head again anytime soon, partly because of the Grenfell Tower inquiry. No politician is going to want to put their hand up and say, you know what, we're going to reduce the fire regulations.
Of course, yeah.
Which is unfortunate, but yeah, but equally, fire brigade unions are actually anti these chemicals because if they do catch fire, they're hugely carcinogenic.
Right. Okay.
But is it going to change in the near future? Sadly, I don't think so.
But also, can I just say something on that?
Yes, absolutely.
Also remember that the same applies to everything else that's not fire rated. That, you know, design it to be loved as long as possible, build it to last as long as possible, and hopefully be able to repurpose it at the end of that life cycle. You know, it's not just the waste thing. That's the same with the natural materials. Just because they might biodegrade, it doesn't mean that they are overall benefit, you know?
Let's say it for wool, naturally fire retardant.
You're all beginning to look a bit hungry, but I've got time maybe for one more question. If anybody has something they really need to get off their chests. Oh, I can't see. Oh, yeah, you're behind a large bunch of flowers, but I can just see some waving.
Hi, thank you very much. I've been very interesting listening to you. I'm Tim, and I work with Only Natural as a campaign. I'm really interested in your views on whether or not we should be looking primarily at consumer consumption patterns and those fashion cycles and phone cycles and so on, or should we be looking at increasing the supply of naturally driven materials, products and so on into the marketplace? Where should we put our effort today and tomorrow?
Who wants that question?
Sounds like one for Anna.
Go on, Anna. It's all yours.
I'm getting there. Okay. I feel like it should be a slight combination of both in a way. So I feel like you can't sort of forget about one and focus on the other. I feel like they should be sort of combined. Of course, the natural materials is sort of the way to go, and I think there should be more implementation of legislation to keep people accountable, brands, manufacturers, and even designers when choosing where they're sourcing from. But that also has to kind of make sense with how to promote those groups in the society to use the natural materials and how they're consuming, and whether it's through models. I know we've just spoken about rental, and in fashion that's becoming, I think, each time more popular, and also other alternatives about how to promote those materials for them to again, buy better quality and not necessarily in sort of just because of the price point. And even though you were mentioning earlier about profit, well, I do believe that just because you're buying less doesn't mean you're still not consuming. You want to provide that sort of profit for the companies, but there's a way to do it where it's maybe they're higher, more expensive, but people know that they're paying for that price and the quality comes with it.
People are nodding. That seems like a very, very good place to end this. Thank you all very much for listening. Thank you for your questions. Mainly, I'd like to thank Joe, Edwin and Anna. Thank you all very, very much.